Welcome. The concept of this yin practice is the idea of a space telescope, particularly a new one that will be launched shortly, and it will be the most powerful space telescope so far. But because it's so big, after it launches into space, it's going to have to unfold. So that's a little bit of the theme of the practice. So in the warm-up, we'll have an unfolding. We'll start off with a very compact posture and move into more expansive postures for a few minutes, and then we'll get into the yin sequence. And the yin sequence is the same way. It starts off with very compact posture, full child's pose, and then moves into more expansive postures, both sides of Sleeping Swan, both sides of half saddle, and both sides of an externally rotated hand to big toe pose. So in keeping with that, some useful props might be a strap for the hand to big toe pose, or a strap-like object, maybe a t-shirt or something. A bolster for half saddle pose, but if you don't have a bolster, again, you can use other kinds of padding like pillows and couch cushions. So gather up some props and we'll get started. The practice starts lying on one's back with the knees bent and moved in towards the chest. So you can just start reclining on your back, and then knees bent, feet on the floor, arms along your sides, and then draw your knees into your torso, collapse your knees with your hands, and just bring everything in until everything kind of stops here. So for you here, so maybe your knees can go really far in. Some of you might be able to wrap your arms around maybe the backs of your thighs or the fronts of your shins, or maybe not. Maybe hands just kind of stay on your knees here. So find something that you can stay in. We'll be here for a while, just to ground and to center here. And if you don't know how to find your center, then start with just noticing your breath here. Notice the rise and fall of your torso, the expansion and the softening of your rib cage, the movement of air through your throat, through your nose. And maybe notice the other things that are happening in the present moment to bring your mental focus to the here and now. So maybe noises that you hear in the background, maybe notice the room temperature, maybe notice little physical sensations going on in your body, maybe notice your mental state, maybe your brain is busy, maybe your heart is busy here. And then see if you can segue into a concept that I know that I call Hawk's vision. And this has to do with our theme of space telescopes, because in Hawk's vision is a metaphor for moving away from the distractions and the noise and the confusion of life. So we're kind of surrounded by it, and we kind of get overwhelmed by it. And Hawk's vision is, for a moment, pause and see yourself as this hawk that's flying far above the situation, your life situation. And as a hawk that's flying very far above, you're seeing kind of the big picture. So you're not seeing all the tiny little distracting and disturbing details. You're seeing kind of the whole landscape of what's going on around you. And you had to do this by this mental process of imagining that you had the ability to get above the noise, to get above all the busy, distracting things that are going on immediately around us and in our brains. So this idea of just staying here in this compact posture. So this is part of the warm-up. We're going to unfold here for a moment in the warm-up, and then we'll unfold again in the yin sequence. But right now, for the next few breaths, cultivate this idea of Hawk's vision. And the Hawk's vision is just to simply look at the bigger picture of what's really going on around you and farther away from you, the whole big picture of things. And to note that a lot of it is just kind of normal and predictable and easy to understand, and so that maybe the small little details, maybe the noise becomes not that important here. This is in parallel with the reasoning for sending up a telescope in space, which I'll get to in the in section here. We'll finish this warm-up by starting to unfold. So release your knees and bring your feet back to the floor. We'll do a little bit of core work here, some bridge work. So extend your arms alongside your torso. Feet are comfortable hip width apart, pretty close into the hips, and the shoulders and the arms are grounding into the floor because we're going to lift our hips up into a bridge pose. Head and neck and shoulders are nice and neutral. And then root through your feet and your shoulders on an inhale. Inhale and engage your muscles to press your hips up towards the ceiling as far as they go for you. And maybe they don't go for very far. That's okay. That's not the point. The point is to engage the muscles and to lift here. And we're going to stay for a while. So find a place where you can stay with your hips lifted, and then sweep your arms out to the side. So arms extended, maybe out to shoulder height in a T position here. See how this feels. If this feels okay, stay here. If it doesn't feel good, bring your arms back in. If you can, keep sweeping them out farther until they're all the way overhead. Maybe palms have to turn up towards the ceiling here. Maybe lift your hips up all the way towards the ceiling and then slowly lower everything back down to the ground. Leave your arms where they ended up. So maybe they're by your torso. Maybe they're out in T position. Maybe they clear up overhead here. So notice we've expanded from this folded in pose. We'll do one more bridge here. So on your next inhale and lift your hips up again just as far as they go. Maybe pause for a moment. And then very slowly lower yourself back down. And then bring your arms, sweep your arms back around. Now we'll do a recliner twist here. So both legs extended for a moment. Again, we're getting more extended, more unfolded here. But then bend your right knee, draw your right knee into your torso. Maybe put your right foot on your left thigh or your left knee. Left hand comes to the right knee, and then we're going to fold, to spinally twist to the left here. So bring that right knee over to the left side. Right arm comes out into a T or cactus arm position here. And we're just here for a couple of breaths here. So head can be neutral. If you like to get a little bit of a twist in your neck, you can look away. One more breath here. And then slowly begin to unfold. Other side here, so both legs are long extended here. And then bend the left knee, draw the left knee into the chest. And then clasp the left knee with the right hand and draw that left leg over to the right to stack the left hip on top of the right. And then the left arm comes out into cactus arm or T position to keep this upper body close to the ground so that we know we're in a spinal twist here. And then maybe hold here for another breath, just so that enough time so that you can feel the twist here. And then bring everything back together. And then finally, we'll do a full body lengthening. So we went from a very compact posture and now a really expansive posture where you extend both legs, extend both arms overhead, and then really stretch so that you're really pushing your heels towards the wall in front of them. You're pressing your fingers towards the wall behind them, and you're kind of really like stretching through each arm. You can wiggle around here, stretch through each leg, maybe point and flex the feet a few times to get just what you feel like is really, really long, as long as you can get. So this is fully unfolded here. And we'll do this. We revisit this little exercise at the end of the yin sequence here. And then arms come back, slowly, gently bend your knees, roll over to one side, bring yourself up. And then we'll get into the longer held yin postures now. So that was basically the warm-up. And that was a mini version of this idea of unfolding. So we're going to start again in a very folded up position for the in sequence. This is full child's pose. And there'll be alternatives because this may not fit everybody here. So for full child's pose, you will sit back on your heels. And then you'll lower your torso forward. And then arms are draped along your sides. Head might be able to rest on the floor, or maybe you'll need a prop like a pillow or a block or a bolster to rest your head on. So that's full child's pose. So notice it's all kind of folded up, as compact as possible. Maybe this doesn't work for you. Maybe you can't sit this way. So an alternative is a wide-legged version of this posture. And a wide-legged means, or wide-kneed version, means bring the knees out to either side so that your torso fits in between your thighs here. So that's another version that you can do here. Since we're going to stay here, we'll stay here for a few minutes. A third version is the knees into chest pose that we did at the beginning of practice. So if neither one of these works, but you can lie on your back and you can just kind of hold on to your knees. This is kind of a third variation. You can just go back to this one again because we're spending some time here. And then once again, since this is yin, check in with your breath. Check in with your sensations. Make sure this is a good edge for you. And there doesn't have to be a lot of sensation here. It can be a bit of a restorative posture, but for a lot of us, there is a lot of sensation. So make sure it's reasonable. It's a good edge here. And just remember, we're staying, the three principles of yin, the first one is find a good edge, find the shape that fits your body. Second principle is stay for a while. And the third principle is let some time pass here. So we'll let some time pass in this posture as we contemplate what it feels like to be all folded up and compact here. So with the concept of Hawk's vision as a metaphor to describe stepping away from all the noise and distractions and complications and frustrations of life. The reason why we want to put a big giant telescope in space is to get a clearer view of the cosmos, because it turns out our own atmosphere on Earth is great for life. We wouldn't be able to live without the air in the atmosphere. But that same atmosphere caused a lot of turbulence and noise and distraction for ground-based telescopes. And if we figured out a long time ago that if we could get up above all that turbulence and noise that occurs in the atmosphere, can see much more clearly. We can see much more in much more detail and much more sensitively out into space, and which just means we can see more. We can see more in space and we can learn more. And that's the main reason we want to go through the very big trouble of taking a telescope and placing it above Earth's atmosphere. And so it's a concept that can be applied to a yoga practice. In a yoga practice, we're trying to suspend or take a break from the noise so that we can see within ourselves more clearly. Maybe just on a physical level by focusing on the physical sensations we're feeling, but at some point maybe on a mental and emotional level we start feeling our thoughts and start understanding. And that takes clarity, that takes the suspension of the noise, of the turbulence, of the things that block this clarity. And that's why space telescopes are useful. The most famous of space telescopes, of course, just to implant an image in your mind, is that of the Hubble Space Telescope. World famous, and it's been in operation for 30 years. Here it launched back in the spring of 1990, which long time ago. And the amazing thing about it is it's still working. And it's still providing images that are so detailed and so that they supply amazing science to the understanding of the universe outside of the atmosphere of Earth here. So maybe just couple more breaths here, and then we can finally start to unfold slowly out of child's pose here. We'll do a few counter activities, counter poses here. So slowly bring yourself up to all fours, to tabletop. And by the way, if your knees are a little bit sensitive here, you can always remind you can always take some padding like a blanket, place it underneath your knees here. I'm going to stay here for a little bit on all fours, so make this pretty sturdy. If you need to adjust your arms and your hands and your knees so your back is nice and neutral, then go ahead and do so. A little bit of core work here. Root through the right knee. Extend the left leg out and then raise the left leg up to torso height and really push through the left leg. So I like to start pushing through that back left heel and slowly tone and be aware of your core here, just to keep things, and this is meant to just keep things really stable while you're here. And then at some point, instead of pushing with your heel, flex your foot so that your toes point back here. And if this is getting too much, you can always put the knee back down, but we'll do a couple of bows here. And by bows, I mean with the leg extended. Slowly bend your elbows, keep them in close if you can to your torso, and then hinge from your hips as you bow forward and raise the left knee up as far as you go. Now, your nose can touch the ground. Maybe that's the challenge here. And if this is too challenging with both legs up, you can do the bow with both knees on the ground. Slowly bring yourself up, and we'll do that bow again just for another cycle here. So when you're ready, slowly begin to bow. You're trying to stay stable through your torso here, just as far as you go for you, and then bring yourself back up. And then the left knee gets down and you can kind of shake things out. So all of that on the right side here. So extend the right leg out, raise the right leg up to torso height. Initially, push back with the right heel to lengthen, feel like you're lengthening through that right leg. And then point through the toes. And then 2 bows here. So when you're ready, bend your elbows and just bow forward as far as you go. Slowly bring yourself up. Maybe pause for a moment and then maybe one more bow here. And then slowly bring yourself up and then bring the right knee down on the ground. So the next yin posture is Sleeping Swan Pose. And there'll be an alternative here. So from hands and knees, bring the left leg foot forward in between the hands, inch the right knee back. So you're coming into a low lunge here. And then maneuver the left foot over to the right side of the yoga mat. Lower the left knee. And as you're doing so, if the left knee starts to get painful, draw the heel in towards your hip more. And then if you're not very close to the ground and that's creating an instability, then you put a prop underneath, some sort of block or books or pillows or blankets or a bolster here, just to kind of create some stability here. So this is basically swan pose. And you can press your hands into the ground and do a little bit of a back bend. This is a yang posture. It's an active posture. And then come into sleeping swan. Slowly lower your torso forward. Any amount. That means you can stay up on straight arms. That means you can maybe make your way down onto forearms. Maybe you make your way down, all the way down onto the floor. You're finding your version of this. This might not fit everybody. So a good alternative to this is Eye of the Needle pose. So for Eye of the Needle, you slowly make your way onto your back. Both knees are bent. Feet are on the floor initially, and then bring the left leg in, put the left ankle on the right thigh, left knee is out wide. Stay here, or the next stage is to draw the right leg into your torso and clasp the right leg with your hands, maybe behind the thigh or in front of the shin. Find which one feels better to you. And then this is a nice alternative to Sleeping Swan. And we'll stay here. We'll stay here for a few more minutes here. Your version. A reminder, you can come out whenever you want to from these postures. So if 1 or 2 minutes is enough, then that's enough. You can also stay longer. You can ignore the video and just marinate longer than 3 or 4 minutes in these postures. So the practice is more valuable to you when you customize it to your needs and your body here. So check in with how you're feeling. Remember, this is a hip opener and not a knee opener. So if you're feeling sharp, biting, burning pain in the knee, then something your edge needs to change here. So I was talking about Hubble, but Hubble's nearly 30 years old. It's far past its mission life, and so there's new space telescopes. By the way, the Hubble Space Telescope isn't the only space telescope. It's just the one that's really good at looking at things in visible light, which is the same wavelength that we can see with our eye, which is why we have a particular adorable relationship with Hubble, because we technically speaking, we can see the same light that Hubble can see, and that enamors it to us. But there's other telescopes that are just as useful as Hubble in the past. There's just a couple of them. There's a Spitzer telescope and Chandra X-ray Observatory, to name a few. The next one that is on the list that's sort of considered the replacement to Hubble, although it's kind of unique in its own way, is a new space telescope that used to be called the Next Generation Telescope. It's scheduled to launch in December of 2021. So if you're watching this video several years after 2021, hopefully it's successfully launched, or you'll know that it didn't launch. Its formal name is the James Webb Space Telescope, and it's much, much larger as far as the mirror is in the collecting area as the Hubble Space Telescope. Just one more breath here, and then we're coming out of Sleeping Swan here. If you are in Sleeping Swan, slowly raise your torso first, come back up into Swan, maybe that nice gentle back bend, and then plant your hands, tuck the back toe, lift the back knee, and slowly bring yourself out of the posture. You can come up into downward facing dog here. This is a nice expansive posture here. Hands are rooted, feet are rooted. Spine, torso is trying to stay as neutral as possible. So if that means you have to rearrange arms and legs and bend knees to do that, then go ahead and do so here. You can take your dog for a walk here by pedaling your heels, or whatever else kind of little motions you'd like to do. And we'll do the other side of Sleeping Swan, or the other side of Eye of the Needle, whatever you chose here. So the right foot is in front, inch the left knee back here, and then start working that right foot over to the left side. Lower the right knee, lower your hips, and then adjust that heel. By the way, if you're really flexible and you're wanting to go deeper, you move the heel away from your hips until you're feeling enough oomph in wherever you're wanting to feel this pose. Again, the emphasis is the hip here, so not wanting to feel pain in the knee here. Come into a nice little back bend here, Swan, just to get ready for this pose, and then settle yourself down into your version of this posture, and maybe it's the other side of Eye of the Needle, depending on the condition of your legs and your hips for this posture here. This is also known as Pigeon Pose, but since we're staying and we're relaxing muscles in this posture, then Sleeping Swan is maybe the more appropriate. It's the yin name for Pigeon Pose here. Check in with your breath. Check in with the sensations on this side. Find your edge. So we're trying to get the telescopes up above the atmosphere. It turns out the atmosphere creates so much turbulence and noise in the data that you can only see so clearly from the ground. Now, technology has made ground-based telescopes much better, but still, if you can get above the atmosphere, the view is very, very clear from up there, and there's so much more you can learn about space when you have a very detailed and clear and sensitive view. And that was Hubble's job. Now it's going to be the James Webb Space Telescope, which is short term is called the Webb Telescope, or Webb here. The Webb Telescope the mirror is so much bigger than the Hubble Space Telescope that there's nothing that it actually has to be folded up. The telescope itself is so voluminous that it can't be the technical term is it has to be deployed, and that is it has to be folded up and then to be launched into space from a rocket. And then when it gets into space, it's going to have to unfold. So it's going to have to do space telescope yoga. It's going to have to do what we're doing right now. Start in a very compact position, and then it'll have to do its space yoga. To unfurl and unfold, the technical term is called deployment. That's what NASA calls it, is they're going to have to deploy the telescope. That's the tricky part. That's the tricky part, to make sure everything unfolds all by itself without any problems. And so there will be a lot of very nervous and worried NASA people watching as it slowly unfurls and unfolds after it gets launched. Because the mirror doesn't fit inside of anything. The mirror of the Webb telescope is 21 feet across, 6.5 meters, which is almost 3 times the diameter of the Hubble Space Telescope mirror. And the Webb mirror is made up of 18 individual segments, some of which are folded up and they have to unfold back in place. And then the big secondary mirror of Webb telescope will have to unfold. Before all that happens, a gigantic solar shield has to unfurl and deploy. And that's what makes the Webb Space Telescope look so interesting. It's maybe a more colloquial term is just weird. Webb Space Telescope looks weird if you've ever seen a picture of it. And it's weird because it has a protective solar shield that will protect it from all of the noise and heat from the sun and the earth. We're done with this side of Sleeping Swan. So when you're ready, slowly bring yourself all the way up. And then slowly come out of Sleeping Swan. This is a yin practice. You don't have to pop out of a posture here. You can make your way onto hands and knees, or you can make your way up into downward facing dog. Slowly start to work out the kinks again. Nicely starting to slowly expand here. And then we'll start to get ready for the next posture. The next posture is known as half saddle pose. Sometimes a little bit of padding can't fold all the way to the ground. Maybe some padding. This is where I'm recommending a bolster, but not all of us have bolsters, so you can either just do this without a bolster or find some pillows and blankets and make a makeshift, or a couch cushion. Good idea here. You start out seated with legs out in front, extended. The small end of the bolster is up against the back side of your low torso. Bend your left knee and bring your left knee on the outside of your left heel on the outside of your left hip here. If you're struggling with doing this, there's an alternative. The alternative is Sphinx Pose here, and I'll demonstrate that in a moment, but I'll finish demonstrating half saddle. So if this is like not working for you, by the way, you can sit up a little bit. You can sit up on the end of the bolster or the pillow if that helps the knee. Again, this is a deep flexed posture that gets into the hip. So the knee should not be feeling sharp biting, burning pain here. You can stay here if you're feeling enough oomph. If you need more oomph, more sensation, you slowly lower yourself back. Maybe you can lower yourself back onto the bolster, and some of you will be able to lower back onto the floor here. Some of you, you're in pain and you need to do something different. And so the something different is, this is a little bit of a back bend, this posture. So the different posture, the alternative will be Sphinx Pose. So for Sphinx Pose, just make your way onto your belly, legs extended comfortably out behind you. Bring your shoulders up, or elbows underneath your shoulders, shoulder width apart. Relax your torso so that your spine sags until you're feeling a light compression in the back of your torso. This is Sphinx. You can do different things with your head. Head can hang, head can be up, head can be resting on maybe a prop like a block here. Otherwise, we'll just kind of continue on here with a few more minutes of half saddle on the left side. We've got two sides of this, so this is the first side. The other side will be, you can do another round of Sphinx if you're doing Sphinx on this, or this pose here. So a couple interesting notes about the new Webb Space Telescope. One of them is the mirror itself is coated with gold, and it's 3 times the diameter of the Hubble. Hubble Space Telescope is about 7 feet in diameter, about 2.5 meters in diameter. Webb Telescope is 21 feet, about 6.5 meters in diameter. Again, its 18 hexagonal mirrors have to unfold, but when they unfurl, then it'll be a huge telescope. Before that, huge solar sail made of this thin film. It's not really a solar sail, it's a solar protector. So the Webb telescope will point away from the Earth and the Sun in such a way that the solar shield will protect it from all the heat and radiation from the Earth and the Sun, so that the telescope can stay very, very cold. This is because the Webb telescope will be primarily an infrared telescope. So we'll look at wavelengths that are a little bit longer than visible light wavelengths. So they're called the mid-infrared and the near-infrared wavelength. It will actually be able to see in the deep red part of the visible spectrum. So you can say technically it can see visible light, but it's really, really designed for infrared wavelengths. Now it turns out it's really hard to observe infrared radiation from space because it gets absorbed by the Earth's atmosphere. And anything that's hot tends to add noise to it. So that's the great thing about the Webb is we're getting it above the Earth's atmosphere so that the atmosphere doesn't absorb infrared light and add noise and heat to the signal. The second thing is it's going to be shielded by this weird looking platform that's a sun shield to keep the telescope so cold that it'll be colder than liquid nitrogen. And that'll make it very much more sensitive to see more clearly the sky around it. So just one more breath here on this side of half saddle or Sphinx Pose. And then you'll slowly come out. And again, the easiest way to come out is to roll away from the bent leg. So you'll slowly roll away until you can actually release that leg. And then probably you want to do what I call a systems check. This is very, very similar to space telescope deployment here, is you want to work the joints, work the knee joint, hip joint, make little circles with the ankle joint to make sure that leg is still working. So we're very much operating like a space telescope. We're testing that everything moves the way it's supposed to move here. And when we're convinced that that's the case, then we'll get ready for the other side. So we'll make our way up. Maybe we just do another round with Sphinx Pose. Get a nice long back bend in. Or this time it's the other leg that's extended. The right knee bends. Bring the right ankle on the outside of the right hip. By the way, whatever the foot does for you, that's what it needs to do. It might be doing something different than my foot. The emphasis is the stretching in the hip flexor here and the front thigh. So you can stay here just seated. If you're feeling a lot, this can be your half saddle. Or you bring yourself back all the way to some padding or all the way to the floor. And then if this is too painful for your knee, maybe that's telling you that maybe a round of Sphinx is a good thing to do on this side. And then we'll stay here a few more minutes on this side. The other thing that the Webb Space Telescope is going to do is it's going to move to what's known as, the jargon term is a Lagrangian point. In other words, it's not going to be in close orbit around the Earth like most normal satellites are, like the Hubble Space Telescope is in orbit around Earth. It's like 380 miles above the Earth in close Earth orbit. The Webb Space Telescope is going to move into a position in space that's 1 million miles away from the Earth. So it won't be in Earth orbit. It will be 1 million miles is about 1.5 million kilometers. But it'll be in a point in space where it kind of stays in the same, it has the same orbital rate. So it'll stay at a same point with respect to the Earth. In other words, it'll rotate around the sun with Earth in approximately the same orbital period so that it doesn't wander away from the Earth. That's what one of these Lagrangian points do. It's kind of a gravity stability point. And this it's called L2 is the nomenclature. There's several Lagrangian points around the Earth. And it's the L2 point that it's going to be. So again, not close to the Earth. The implication of that is we won't be able to go and fix it if it breaks, like the Hubble Space Telescope. Since the Hubble was close to the Earth, in Earth orbit, we can send astronauts easily up to the Hubble to fix it, particularly when we have the space shuttle. We can't do that with Webb, since Webb is going to be so far away from Earth. And the reason is to get away from the radiation and the heat of the Earth and the Moon, to make the telescope even more sensitive. But the downside is there's no rescue for the telescope if the telescope doesn't behave flawlessly. And we'll get to wait and see what happens, because this is a far more complicated telescope than Hubble was. So one more minute here. Like I said, it's going to be an infrared telescope. So once it completely unfurls, it's going to investigate and observe the infrared universe. It was basically designed to observe the early universe. Since it's an infrared telescope, it'll be able to see a little bit farther back in time towards the origination of galaxies, because it can see past a lot of gas and dust and obscuring material that optical light that we can see within our eye, can't penetrate. In other words, Hubble can't see past that. But Webb will be able to see past it because it'll be looking at longer wavelengths. The other thing Webb will be optimized to do now is to look at exoplanets. Now we've discovered more than 5,000 exoplanets. We really want to study them to understand their nature and their makeup, and to see if any of them are very similar and have very similar conditions to Earth. And we'll also be studying just the objects in our own solar system. We'll be closely studying asteroids and comets here. So that's all of the main focus of the science projects that the Webb Space Telescope is set up to do here. Just one more breath on this side of half saddle. And then when you're ready to come out again, easiest thing to do is to slowly roll away until you can release the leg that was bent back. And then it's kind of obvious that you kind of want to just move around and feel that the reverberation, if you will, the kinks and the stagnation, the stiffness that might have developed in the leg that was folded back. So you do the systems check, you do the deployment and the expansion of the leg, just like they're going to deploy and unfurl the solar shield and deploy and unfold the telescope here. Notice we're getting a little bit more expanded here, so the next posture is a very expanding posture. It's hand to big toe pose. So when you're ready, most of us will need some sort of a strap device. Although if you're really flexible in your hips and legs, you maybe don't need a strap. Get the strap ready. You'll lay on the floor on your back, legs extended here. And then take the strap, bend the left knee, bring the left knee in towards your torso, wrap the strap around the bottom of your left foot, and then extend the left leg as much as it extends for you until it's fully extended. Clasp the strap with both hands, slowly raise the left leg up as high as it will go here. Head, neck, and shoulders are all comfortably resting on the ground here. Walk your hands up the strap as much as they go until you're feeling enough oomph in that left leg. So this is the beginning of this posture. So notice we're all lengthened out now, and now we're unfolding here. So we're going to lower the left leg out to the left and stay there for a while. Take the strap in the left hand and then slowly control the descent of the left leg as you open it up to the side. Right arm can unfurl into a T position, so extended out to the right, or maybe cactus arm position, kind of whatever your preference is. Head and neck can stay neutral, or you can turn your head and neck to face and look down the right arm. Kind of your choice. So this is the posture. By the way, if this leg is floating, you can put bolsters or pillows underneath that leg if they need a little bit of stability here. And then we're going to stay here for a few minutes or so. So they started developing the Hubble Space Telescope clear back in the 1940s. And notice it didn't get launched until 1990. So it takes a very long time because these are some of the most complicated machines imaginable here. They started designing Webb in the 80s and the 90s. So before even Hubble was launched, they were starting to design this next generation space telescope. And they finally have it finished. It should have launched a few years ago, but there were some delays. And now it's all ready, it's all packed up, it's all folded. It'll be loaded onto a rocket, it'll be launched, and then it'll unfurl here. The interesting thing is when it arrives at its position in space, a million miles away from the Earth, the sun shield will face towards the sun, and the telescope will be on the opposite side of this very, very intricate sun shield. It turns out that the telescope actually has to have thrusters to correct for error in its position. And the reason is because the sun shield is so big, even though it's protecting the telescope from heat and from light, there is so much pressure, radiation pressure from the sun on this large sun shield. The sun shield is as big as a tennis court, by the way. that solar pressure from the sun will actually press on and move the telescope. It'll actually try to push it away and out of its position and out of its orbit. So occasionally, every few months, it actually has to fire thrusters to get itself back into its position. That's how much force the light from the sun will have on this solar shield. So interesting maneuvers that they have to do to keep this telescope in position. So about one more minute here on this side. So space telescopes aren't up in space because they're closer to the things they're looking at. They're up in space to get away from all the noise and the distraction of the turbulence of Earth's atmosphere, the heat and the light from the sun, and the reflected heat and light off of Earth and the moon here. And so that's why it's better. It's better to get it out into kind of deep solar system space, away from planet Earth, although it'll be close enough that it can radio back all of its data back to mission control here. So we're slowly coming out of this posture. Slowly bring that left leg back up. Maybe clasp the strap with both hands just momentarily and re-lengthen that left leg out for a moment. And then slowly bend the left knee and release everything. You can give the left knee a hug. Thank the left knee for its work. Extend the left leg out. And we'll just go ahead and do the right side now. So now the right knee bends. Draw the right knee into the torso. Wrap the strap around the bottom of the right foot. Extend the right leg out. Clasp the strap with both hands. Remember, the other leg is just relaxing, extended on the floor here. Draw the leg up with both hands. Again, torso, head and neck and shoulders are comfortable or solidly and stably on the floor here. And then grab the strap with your right hand and start to lower the right leg over to the right. Left arm extends out to the left here. And then head can stay neutral here, or if you want to, you can turn your head to the left and look over this left shoulder here. And then we're here for a few more minutes here. So we're fully unfolded here now. We're fully deployed here. We went from full child's pose, which is completely compact posture, to a very expansive posture. We've got arms and legs kind of moving it kind of extended out in all different directions here. So notice how this feels compared to when you're all folded up and compact here. That's what I meant by we're moving from a folded position to more expansive postures here. Notice your breath, notice the sensations here, and then just notice the time passing. From here, can you come back to this yoga idea of Hawk's vision? Again, we're coming back to the analogy of the space telescope is to get above the noise of the atmosphere. In Hawk's vision, we're trying to get above the noise of our life, just all the little details that overwhelm us. And if we can do that, then we realize that maybe the details aren't really that important, and we can find a sense of calm and of intent and purpose when we can momentarily get away, get not so swamped with the details, which is exactly the point to a space telescope. The space telescope is trying to get away from the heat, the light, the turbulence of the atmosphere of Earth, so that it can see very sharply and very clearly and with a lot of sensitivity. And that means it can see much fainter objects, and objects that are farther away from us tend to be faint because they're very far away. So it's often said that you can see farther in space with these big sophisticated telescopes, because you can see the fainter, because they're so sensitive, and you can see so clearly that you can see these very far, faint, and therefore faint objects. And that's what's meant by the term deeper. I think in a lot of pop culture science articles, you often hear the word, this telescope will see deeper into space than any other telescope. Well, deeper just means it can see more clearly, it's more sensitive to very faint objects, and therefore can detect and study objects that are very far away, because the farther away they are, the fainter they are here. So one more breath on this side. And then we're coming out of this posture. Slowly bring the right leg back up, draw the right leg in for a moment, and then bend the right knee gently. Release the leg. We're done with the strap, or the prop that you were using as a strap here. And then a little bit of integration before resting pose. So we're coming back to this full body lengthening. So extend both legs out long, extend your arms long above your head, and then reach with your arms and your fingers. Reach far away from your head as far as you go. And again, you can do a little bit of wiggling here where you're reaching with one arm and shoulder, and then the other arm with the shoulder, and then both arms with the shoulder. And then also you're doing the same thing with your legs. So legs are moving, can kind of wiggle your hips to kind of stretch each leg. You can point and flex your feet a few times, maybe point your feet away to get long here. And then from here, slowly move into your resting posture here for the end of this practice. It can be a traditional Shavasana resting posture. It can be seated meditation or your favorite restorative posture. I'm going to suggest and demonstrate legs up the wall pose here. So you want to try legs up the wall. I'm going to use a bolster this time. You can use a blanket or a pillow or no props underneath you at all. Just placing this padding next to the wall, and then you sit sideways next to the wall. Going to rotate my legs up the wall here. And this is the tricky part. Sometimes it takes a few tries, but you'll kind of roll yourself up against the wall. Legs are extended, pointed up towards the wall. You get your hips, bottom of your torso as close to the wall as possible. For a lot of us, it's not going to make it to the wall. Just trying to get it close here. And then head, neck, shoulders, arms are extended and comfortable. Again, you're wanting this to be pretty comfortable posture. So if pillow helps, if blankets help, if you're chilly, extra clothing might help here. And then the idea is to just release and let go and soften. Maybe for a while, take on the attributes of a space telescope. You're above the atmosphere of your daily life. You're temporarily suspending and taking refuge from the turbulence and the noise, and allowing yourself to focus and see clearly your own inner cosmos as it really is here. You notice the rise and the fall of your own breath. Maybe notice your circulation. You can notice the firing of your neurons in your brain by the thoughts that they are creating, by the emotions that you're feeling. And so you're out there, and you're gazing again on your self-cosmos here as you continue to soften. If you notice a place that's particularly rigid with muscle tension or mental tension, and see if you can continue to unfurl expand and soften in those areas. Slowly bring yourself back. Get deep in your breath. You can start to make little motions with fingers, with toes. Expand that motion. Hands into feet, arms, legs. Gently rock your head, your neck, your shoulders from side to side. If you're practicing legs up the wall like I am, you can maybe see if you can bend your knees, put your feet against the wall, and press yourself a little bit away from the wall. And then very gently roll over onto one side. When you get onto your side, stay here for a while. Kind of regain your bearings. Give yourself time to ground here. And also give yourself a big thank you. Cultivate some gratitude for your efforts and your practice. But also some deep gratitude for you, your unique embodiment in this universe. The universe is ecstatically joyful that you are here. And then when you feel ready, slowly bring yourself up to a comfortable seat. When you have established that, feeling stable, grounded, then bring your hands together in front of your heart center. And I'll end this practice with an Om. The inner light in me honors the inner light in you. Namaste.